Hi everybody, it's Joe Chaffee here. It's a Friday night. Finally got to a Friday, December the 7th, 2018. We are at 7:03 Eastern Time as we get ready for what's going to be a pretty hefty snowstorm for interior areas of North Carolina and into southern and particularly southwestern Virginia. We're going to be watching with interest just exactly what the top amounts are, but also I'm going to be very curious to see how this all winds up in terms of where the snow, ice, rain line is going to ultimately finish up, and how far south and west is the icing going to be a problem. Is it going to extend into northeastern Georgia? I think it may very well do that, and might also see it up into certainly into northwestern South Carolina with some icing issues, and even into parts of North Carolina. We can unequivocally say, for those of you who are watching in the Northeast, if you are north of, say, Charlottesville, if you draw an east-west line from Charlottesville, Virginia, south of the Washington, D.C. area, from there north and east, there really isn't going to be anything. Perhaps I might have the exact northern fringe line off by a bit, but as far as accumulating snows for Washington, Baltimore, New York, Philadelphia, New York City, Boston, the big cities up the I-95 corridor, not happening. It is a dry and cold weekend. Everything is going to be suppressed to the south for the reasons that we've been saying all week long. The upper air is just not there. So you need to have a flow up along the East Coast that is not northwest, and that's what we have from basically from Delaware up to northern New England. You have a strong flow of northwest winds in the upper atmosphere. You can't turn a storm up the East Coast in an upper air environment such as that. So you can sit around and root for it all you want if you're a snow lover up in the Northeast. It's not happening this time. So I'm going to start off. We're going to go to the watches and warnings because they were expanded today, late this afternoon. We have a large area. Virtually the western half of North Carolina is under a winter storm warning, as is the northwestern counties of South Carolina that border the North Carolina border there. They are also under a winter storm warning. Winter storm watches are now up a little bit further to the east in North Carolina, and also in southern Virginia. You have the southwesternmost counties under a winter storm warning with winter storm watches just north and west of there. We have flood watches up for Georgia, for a good chunk of the state of Georgia, and we have flood watches along the Alabama, Mississippi Gulf Coast, back to southeastern Louisiana, much of the western part of Louisiana, and all of northeast Texas. Still going on with winter weather advisories throughout much of northwest Texas, snaking through parts of Oklahoma into northern Arkansas, where we also have a winter storm warning that has been posted for a number of counties in northernmost Arkansas. There's a bit of a gap in between there and what's going on. You don't have any watches and warnings or advisories up for Tennessee. I guess it's one of the odd nature of this particular system that there's likely to be warm air that's going to advect northward into that area that's going to produce rain, and then as the cold air tries to come back in, it's probably going to be too little too late. But it's a very tenuous position for those in the southeast that are where you're under the watches and warnings, because of the fact that it's a matter of waiting to see how far south the cold air drains. And from experience, we can tell you from what we've seen over the years and what meteorologist Jason Nappy had talked about yesterday, it almost always winds up being more than modeled, and it certainly looks as if what we're seeing tonight is showing more cold air that's going to be draining down to the south. So I figured we'd get to some of the maps that we've got from the Weather Service as far as their forecast. They've kind of juiced up their snow amounts a little bit as we have gone through the day. As we get these maps going, I just want to quickly welcome those of you who are watching from the SS Storm Chase and Forecast page, where I do some forecasting work on South Central Pennsylvania and North Central Maryland. You have no issues with regards to this storm. To those from my Facebook page, meteorologist Joe Chaffee, welcome, and also here too, no issues with regards to this. And that covers eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. You can include New Jersey, you can include New York City in that, and also for Long Island and the Hudson Valley. And also to the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut Storm Watch page, welcome aboard. And those that are on Angry Ben's Angry Weather page, that Ben helps me out with one of my websites, nycweathernow.com. So here's where we've got the forecast, National Weather Service for snow forecast map for southwestern Virginia. And Roanoke's kind of been bumped up, Lynchburg's been bumped up a little bit to about 4. Roanoke, they're forecasting 6. Blacksburg is 5, sort of lowered the amount a little bit there. And then you start to see the bigger amounts as you get down closer to the North Carolina border, like at Martinsville, Danville, South Boston, all 9 to 10 inches. Now, I would just say where I think for the toughest part of this forecast is probably that northern fringe, because it could, sometimes it's very, very tight. We've had it here. We talked about this, my colleague Joe Rayo and I talked about this back in 2016 in the Hudson Valley. You could literally walk from one spot to another over a couple of miles, where there was a foot of snow in parts of Putnam County, and then you walk you go about 2 miles and go from 10 inches to a coating. That's how sharp it was. And in an instance like this, with the cold, dry air, there's going to be a very sharp dividing line between the snows that you wind up with just a coating to an inch, and then you start getting into the 4 to 6 inch amounts from there. I'm just going to give a quick check here. I just want to make sure you guys are all hearing me okay, so that is a good thing. I don't see anybody saying that they're not hearing me, so that is also a good thing. Those audio issues from last night, I think I was able to resolve them, but it just took me a little while afterward to do that, and I apologize again for the technical issue. Now we're going into North Carolina, western North Carolina. These amounts have also been kind of juiced up a bit. 7 for Charlotte, 9 for Salisbury, 10 for Gastonia, and then you're looking at 1 foot plus amounts as you go up toward the north and northwestern part of the state. Asheville has been raised up to 1 foot. Waynesville 12, Brevard at 15. Amounts they scale off fairly quickly as you get down into South Carolina. Greenville, Spartanburg, 1 to 2 inches here, but just north and west of Greenville, Spartanburg, and then you're talking about 6 to 12 as you get closer to the North Carolina border. This is another area where we're going to have to watch closely. If that cold air is more important, you could wind up dragging that 6-inch line a bit further to the south, and less than an inch in the other counties, Union, Chester, going into Rock Hill, North Carolina, Lawrence, North Carolina, Abbeville, and Anderson. They're forecasting 0 and 0 amounts into the counties that are in northeast Georgia, with the exception of the northeasternmost county, Clayton, where they're giving 4 inches. Again, the areas bordering South Carolina and Georgia going to have to watch this closely. Also, the icing issue is probably greater in the areas that you see the low snow amounts, where there could be 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch of ice that could accumulate on surfaces. So we're going to be watching out. There's going to be a significant icing event for some areas. Now, further west, where we get what we call the snow shadow because of the mountains. So on the west side of the mountains, we're seeing much lower amounts, and those amounts really drop off very rapidly, as we can see here for Johnson City at 5, Abingdon 5 inches, 3 inches in Wise. That's on the Virginia Panhandle, western part of westernmost part of Virginia. Morristown 2, less than an inch at Knoxville. La Follette at 2, Athens at 1, and Chattanooga less than 1 at Athens, and less than 1 in Chattanooga. Now to more toward eastern North Carolina, the Weather Service has beefed up amounts a bit for Raleigh-Durham, where yesterday they had 2, now they've got 5. 6 for Durham, 6 for Pittsboro, 5 for Henderson, 4 for Lewisburg, and you can see the amounts start going up as you get toward Burlington, Greensboro at 10, Winston-Salem 10, Lexington 9, Asheboro at 7. South and east, you start to go down to a coating to an inch or 2 as you head toward Clinton, Goldsboro, Tarboro, Wilson, Enfield, all in the either less than an inch or the 1 to 2 inch range, but a little bit more cold air, and you start to bring some of those accumulating snows of a couple of inches close to I-95, particularly as you go north toward Roanoke Rapids. That part of 95 might see some impact from the snow. It's going to be a close call. East and southeast of here, it is less than an issue. By the way, I just brought this one other map up just to shift emphasis here a bit to upstate New York and northern New England. The snowfall ending in the last 24 hours has actually been quite significant over parts of north central New York from the lake effect snows, with some 15, 20-inch amounts in that big red spot up in north central New York. I'm not sure what specific towns got. I didn't have a chance to look. Also some snows up in northern New England and up into northern Maine. Nothing especially heavy, but certainly the ski resorts are all doing well, and also some lake effect stuff that went on in and around the Buffalo area last night. I've pulled up the SREF model, okay, and the SREF model is it's out of Stony Brook University, which is right near my house on Long Island, and I believe that's 20. It's got 26 different members to it, if I remember the count. And it comes out every 6 hours, and we call these the plumes, okay? And this is the plume viewer. And I'm going to put really quick, I'm going to give you guys the link. You could always Google this, but here's the link to the plume viewer, because if you want to play with this at home, it is a very interesting tool. So you go to your map. We're going to zoom in on North Carolina. The way I think the SREF tool should be used is not so much with regards to specifics in terms of the forecast, but rather try and look for the trends on the SREF in terms of the amounts. Now, I went back. If you click on the menu that's across the top here, you can actually click on where it says total snow. You go down to the map and you find, zoom in on the geography, and you put in your city. So all the different members of the models plot their snow amounts, and for Raleigh-Durham, the dark black line is the average of all of them, and it's forecasting an average of about 3.03. That's a little bit higher from what I saw last night. So the model trend on the SREF is slightly higher for Raleigh-Durham. For Charlotte, it's forecasting 4.15, which is pretty interesting. It's not. I wouldn't use the SREF as, pick the mean number, because that's not going to help you in your forecast. It's really the trend that's more important. Mooresville, it gives 4.5. Winston-Salem, it gives 4.48. I'm going to go west to Brockford, 7.96. So now you start to get into some of the higher numbers here as you go north and west. This is north and west of, I think that's Lenoir, and that's 15.2. And I'm not sure what point this is. I can't. They put the dot right over the highway. I can't even see it, and I can't get any tighter here. We're still in North Carolina. I can't make out what highway that is, unfortunately, to give you at least a clue to what the station is. But whatever it is, it's 12.79, and along 77. Not too far from Galax, G-A-L-A-X, 10 inches there. Blacksburg will be interesting to look at on the SREF. And it gives almost 10 inches at Blacksburg. Roanoke in Virginia, almost 9.19. South and west of Lynchburg, it gives 7.45. So actually, it's funny, the numbers have actually come up also in southwestern Virginia. Perhaps the SREF, some of the members are indicating that there's a bit of a warm intrusion. Maybe there's going to be some ice issues with this that might hold snow accumulations down on the eastern flank. But the bottom line is now, I think we just could kind of say we're going to just let her rip as far as this storm is concerned. The models, we're getting to the point now where we're almost into real time. Just a couple of things that I did notice today was that the NAM model, which had looked kind of suppressive on the northern edge of the precip, sort of bulged a little bit back further north today. You can see on the colors here how tight it goes from 1/100th of an inch of liquid to a couple of tenths to a half an inch to an inch to an inch and a half of liquid precipitation. So you're looking at a large area of North Carolina into southern Virginia that's going to wind up with an inch or two of liquid on the NAM. And then you get further down into North Carolina, into southwestern part of the state, into northwestern South Carolina with 2 and 3 inches worth of liquid. Same for Georgia, 2-3 inch plus liquid amounts. There's a fairly impressive tropical feed here of moisture that is coming in that was evident on the satellite and on the radar. In fact, let me just show you the radar tonight, which is loaded. We'll get the wider view. The precip that kind of ran out ahead has dried up. That's through Georgia and South Carolina. The main batch is still is coming out now, and that is over much of northeastern Texas, getting some very heavy rains, moving into the northwestern half of Louisiana, southern Arkansas, and then it kind of narrows through central Mississippi into west central Alabama. So you do have a fairly loaded radar picture here with all this moisture that is going to be headed up into the southeastern part of the U.S. So I'm going to start with the NAM3. NAM3 was pretty impressive with this. So we'll go back. Right now we are at 0Z, and I'm going to use this this region here so that you guys, those of you that are watching from the southeast U.S., and welcome to you, by the way, if you are new to my YouTube channel. Welcome aboard. Participate in the chat. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is absolutely free. You just need a Gmail address, and you can subscribe to the YouTube channel and jump in on the chat. I'll try to come, toward when we're done with the maps. I'll come out to the board and take whatever questions you have. But the NAM3 kind of struck me today a bit. You can see in northern Arkansas that narrow area of snow and ice that develops. That's what the winter storm warnings that are up for those northwesternmost counties there. The system is not pushing that precip up into southern Missouri like it was modeled a couple of days ago. The mostly rain in Tennessee, as we said, there's kind of some warm advection, movement of warm air from the Gulf of Mexico with the low center near east of New Orleans here by tomorrow evening. At this point, you're going to start to see some snow in southwestern North Carolina develop as that cold air starts to wedge in. And it really takes a good part of the night before you begin to see a gradual expansion of the snow area. So now we're at about 3 a.m. Sunday morning, and you have this expanding area of snow and ice in western North Carolina, into northwestern South Carolina, and even into northwestern Georgia. Also, there's that narrow band that's up on the northern fringe of this along the Tennessee-Kentucky border into southernmost Kentucky. And then it's, again, as that cold air works in, you're going to see it change more and more to snow in northeastern Tennessee, southwestern Virginia, and throughout western North Carolina. Large area of ice. I again, and we're not going to know this till it's actually happening. This is where forecasters literally have to look at weather observations hour by hour and just watch to see what we used to call the sequence, which was standing over a teletype and watching weather stations print out their observations one after another. We're just going to be watching the sequence and seeing what the stations are reporting, basically looking out the window. The heavy snow area actually on the NAM3 pushes pretty far east into Virginia, almost to the coast there, believe it or not. I mean, I'm not 100% sure whether that's going to happen. That will have to do, I believe, with the depth of the surface low. If it's a little bit deeper, it'll probably draw more cold air in, and then it sort of plays through. Notice the northern edge of the rain, southern part of the Delmarva Peninsula to maybe for about an hour or two near the Delaware border, and then out. And then you've got residual precip that is left over after that. The NAM 12 late this afternoon. I think the NAM 12 kind of maybe has the best picture of that and the parallel GFS. The same idea. Really, it's after about 1 a.m. Sunday morning that you start to see this blossoming area of snow and ice. It's fairly significant in northeastern Georgia, for northwestern South Carolina, and then that southern tier of North Carolina. You'll probably have an area there where it's kind of going back and forth. The eastern flank cuts off probably just southeast of Raleigh-Durham toward I-95, much like how the Weather Service has got their forecast. It's hard to really argue against that. And the surface low actually intensifies here down to a 998 low as it approaches Hatteras. That could actually cause some more cold air to drain in on the backside and then moves away onto the northeast. I'm going to pull up a map that we don't really show too often. And I'm not exactly sure what FGen is, okay? But the part of this map that I'm concerned that I'm really looking at is the zero line, okay? It might be a little bit hard to see. I'm not sure if you can see it well, but it's the solid blue line that comes in into the North Carolina coast, into northwestern South Carolina, then snakes northward in eastern Tennessee, and then backs westward across along the Tennessee, just north of the Tennessee-Kentucky border. That zero line, that's the zero isotherm at 850 millibars, or roughly at about 4,600 feet, roughly, okay? The zero line is usually a good indicator. Now, you have to look at what's going on at the other levels beneath it, but the zero line is usually a good place to look where the rain-snow line or the snow-ice line might be, at least. And you'll notice as we go through Saturday, that zero line kind of inches a bit north until we get to 5 or 6 a.m. And then in northwestern South Carolina, it just expands, and actually you get a significant cooling by the time between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. The 850 temperature in that area in western North Carolina drops from just slightly below zero to -6 Celsius. You know, that's a significant development there. And as we go through Sunday, that zero line just kind of gets pinned and drawn a little bit further to the south into northern South Carolina, northern Georgia. At that point, the precip on the western flank is probably beginning to wane as the low starts to pull away toward the northeast. But that level of the atmosphere is a good one to watch. And I'll take it just on this other map, it'll still just isolate in the blue. That is, if you want to figure that if you take where the precip is on the model and just kind of match it up to where the temperature at 850 is below zero, it's probably a good indicator of where it will be snowing. And here it is at 1 a.m. This is where the snow area, as we showed you, was just beginning to expand, and then it really revs up and expands considerably during the overnight hours. Kind of gets pinned up a bit there as the low begins its move up the coast. You can actually watch the warm air advection here. So you watch the yellow area, the yellow colors pushing up along the Carolina coast, and that's with the surface low pushing northward, that warm tropical air in the Atlantic advecting northward toward the Carolina coast. And of course the cold air is being swept in behind it as the low center goes by. So the pieces are here for this snowstorm, and for southern areas, and there are cities in that zone that don't see 6-inch snowfalls too often, let alone 1 foot plus snowfalls. So it's all going to be relative to the location. If some of the areas that are a little further to the east wind up with 3, 4, or 5 inches, for them, that's a snowstorm. For the areas in the mountains where perhaps a 1 foot plus snowstorm happens, it's infrequent, but it's not overly rare. For them, the 1 foot plus would be categorized as a snowstorm. This is a pretty significant event that's developing here for the southern part of the southeastern part of the U.S. into the southern areas of the Mid-Atlantic. And again, looking at that upper air, if you are a snow lover wondering here why this is not coming up, I'm going to take the upper air here for Sunday afternoon, okay? And we're going to go on the paint box. We were doing this all week, but in case you're new and you're trying to kind of get an understanding of how this all works in the upper air, we're going to look at the 18,000 foot level, the winds at that level of the atmosphere, and we have an upper low. I'm going to outline everything here for you. So here we have a low. There's an upper low sitting in northwestern Nebraska. You have what looks like what's left of an upper low sitting in eastern Tennessee, and you have a strong upper low that's off the map up in northeastern Canada. So if you remember that winds around lows blow counterclockwise, so here's your flow. This is how the upper air winds are blowing at the 18,000 foot level. Okay, and now you've got the winds that I'm indicating here coming out of Canada and across New England. All right, so here's the bottom line through all of this. You have northwest winds, as we said earlier, pretty much if you follow this 561 height line, okay, right in there, it turns westerly. In other words, it goes west. The winds aloft go west to east when you reach the Delmarva Peninsula, and then they continue out to the east. The northern fringe of the precip, where we mentioned earlier, gets maybe to the northern part of the Delmarva Peninsula. And then you start to get into the jet that's coming from the northwest. When you get a little bit further north from there, this is all dry air that's up in New England. If that northern jet had gotten out of the way, it's a delicate balance. You needed to get out of the way just enough so that you allow the system from the south to be able to lift up into the northeast. It's not getting out of the way. The system that's behind it is sort of acting as a kicker, like a punter in a football game, moving the system that's to the east, the one that's impacting the southeast U.S., and it's going to kick it away to the northeast. And this is the reason why Maryland, Pennsylvania, that includes those of you watching from south central Pennsylvania, north central Maryland, and points north and east to New York City, New Jersey, the Hudson Valley, New England, New York State. You're not getting anything from this. This is just going to be a dry, cold weekend, and except for high clouds, that is it. All right, as far as this storm is concerned. So, in fact, when I take it forward on the GFS, that jet, now we're into Monday. You still have northwest winds going on across New England and from Canada. It doesn't go away. The jet never really got out of the way, and you might have been able to make a case even for that second upper low if you watch that second upper low. But that is also, the energy from that is basically getting squashed because of that northwest flow. It's amazing how strong it is. Oftentimes, if it gets out of the way too fast, then your storms wind up going inland and to the west, and we turn over to rain. So it's a very, very delicate balance that you have to achieve in the upper air. And that northwest flow is actually going to stay in place in the east through at least Wednesday before it finally, along about Thursday, starts to pull out. And that's going to allow the next weather system for next weekend to make its approach. And we're looking at the jet stream here in the east. This is a pretty intense feature here that's coming out of the southwest that's going to be lifting up to the east coast. The upper feature is the surface low. Remember that northern jet is gone, so you're going to wind up with a system that's going to be inland, and it's going to mean rain for next weekend. So if you take a look at this, we're going to have pretty much a dry week. That surface high to the north goes out off the coast southeast of Cape Cod and moves just straight east. You've got a southerly flow. The surface low for that storm system runs up well to the west of the Appalachians into western New York. You'll probably have one of these situations where that low will occlude out, and there'll be a second low at the point of occlusion, which the model will pick up on as we get closer somewhere near the coast. And that's why you see this huge area of heavy rain that's being shown. And this is for Friday night into Saturday, but that's so far down the road. We'll see how this pans out. But the models have been actually showing this now for the last 4 or 5 days or so, and they haven't really let go on this idea of a system for next weekend that's going to be on the strong side, strong southeast winds along the east coast ahead of it, and some very heavy rains that'll sweep through, and then it'll turn drier. There's not a whole lot of cold air to play with here in the next 10 days or so. We mentioned yesterday and earlier this week how the pattern, up until since the middle of October, we've had this pattern where we've gotten cold air that has bled down from Canada into the U.S. And at times has moved down pretty far south. Other times no. That pattern is breaking down a bit, which is not unusual considering that we've been in that pattern pretty much for the last 8 weeks. That's a pretty long stretch to stay locked in one pattern. So we are seeing it breaking down. The interesting thing about it is, to me, is that in the Pacific, we're seeing a breakdown in Western Canada and into the Gulf of Alaska and back through the Aleutians and on up toward Russia and Siberia. There's this very long sort of amorphous trough that extends down to the west coast. This is cut off cold air, the cold air flow out of Canada to some degree. So you're not going to have Canadian cold air at least for a little while, until maybe when we start to get closer to Christmas. The models seem to be at least attempting to establish a little bit of a connection to colder air coming back down from Canada as we head toward, say, from December 20th onward. This upper air that we're seeing for December 23rd, if you're a cold weather lover or a snow lover, is not that bad. It actually, looks like it's going back. It looks like it's going back to what we just had. It's not quite as amplified, but it has the look of a ridge in the west, trough in the east. There's actually a little bit of blocking being indicated here from Greenland into northeastern Canada around this upper low that'll be in eastern Canada. So this suggests, at least for now, and some of the ensembles is suggested, and some other models suggesting that we will, perhaps see it start to turn a little more a little colder again toward the end of the month, and then when we start going into the month of January, if we keep this Pacific flow intact, by the way, it's going to mean for maybe a pretty interesting January going forward. We'll see. I'm not a big long-range guy. Those of you who are new to the channel, let me just say that right off the bat. So if you're going to throw questions at me about the rest of the winter, I'm just not going to answer them because I'm not a long-range person. I've said many times the long range to me is so technical and too complicated, and it's too much for me to wrap my head around. And honestly, I don't enjoy it as much. I like the short range. That's where I've cut my teeth over the years on short range forecasting, and I try and stay inside that 10-day time frame. Maybe when we talk about going out 2 weeks or so, that's about the limit, and only in a very broad way do I speak about that. but I'm not big on the long range stuff. So on to the board tonight. Nice crowd that we have on a Friday night. Pretty good. So big hello to all the regulars that are on here. Watershed 44. Weird feeling that ice storms will be a quote thing this winter, even in the Mid-Atlantic. Well, I'll just say this: the early part of the winter, what we're seeing right now, what we've seen so far, and what we're seeing right now, nothing repeats exactly, but it does tend to rhyme. When you go through the course of the winter, you do get a sense of repetitiveness to how weather systems evolve and how they play out. So it's important. This is where it's really important for those of you who are young forecasters that are on. Make that memory of yours like a file cabinet and put everything in there. Okay, try and remember how things play out. Do not treat each individual storm, while it has its own uniqueness. You don't shut one thing off and then turn it back on for the next storm and completely forget what you just experienced. Use that experience in order to help you in making your forecast. And I would also say, by the way, those of you who are watching from the southern parts of the Mid-Atlantic or the Southeast, I have visited there many times, but I'm not really that familiar with your local climate and how things play out. Your local weather people and your local National Weather Service know your area much better than I do. Okay, I know my area very well, but I don't necessarily have good expertise when it comes to what happens when we get these storms, what happens in the elevated areas, what happens in the valleys. You folks who live there, you've lived there for years, you know from years of experience how some of these storms play out, and there will be a similarity, obviously, to what happens with this storm and what you've experienced in the past. Why go, bros? You are in the county I live in Lincolnton, North Carolina. Okay. Let me just see where that is. So hang on one second. It would make it easier, by the way, when you do ask for, when you ask for points. If you tell me where you live, that's great. But also tell me, how many miles are you from the nearest big city? For example, I'm seeing on the map that you're literally between Charlotte and Hickory. So if you go by what the models are indicating, and based on some of the forecasts, you're under a winter storm warning, and you're talking about double-digit snow amounts, if not where you are, not that far away from where you are. So I hope that helps. I would go to weather.gov and click on the part of the map so that you can pull up your local National Weather Service office. It probably is the Greensboro office. I'm just guessing, GSO. So you can pull that map up, that office up, and see what they are forecasting for your particular area. Let's see, Asheville snow record 18.2 in the Great March Storm of 1993. I don't know. Look, Scott, here's the thing, and I'll just say this. When you see, I am not a big fan of using words like historic and epic and all the rest of it. I, let the event happen, and then, while it's happening, you can start going into that sort of stuff. I don't know that it's particularly useful to use that, that phraseology, go ahead of it. Again, I can't use it because I'm not, and I don't live there, so I don't live in that area, so I don't have a sense of the history. I have a good sense of the history of what's gone on in the New York City, Long Island, New Jersey, Hudson Valley area, so I have a much better handle on the on storms up here if we were to ever get a historic event. But I would rather leave to the post storm analysis. that they would be doing, because then we'll know exactly what's happened. Look, this is going to be a sizable snowfall, snow and ice storm for the southeast. You've had them before. They don't happen too often. You're going to have one again. If it winds up breaking records, it winds up breaking records. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But, prepare accordingly. You should be prepared for a sizable storm. And I know in that part of the South, things do tend to shut down over amounts that northern areas are more capable of handling with regards to snow removal, ice removal, and the rest of it. Common sense, okay? That really is, what it boils down to. So I hope that helps you out. Why go bros in Lincoln, North Carolina? Okay, just running up through the chat board here. And I see you put the question up multiple times. I was, as I said, I usually do the weather part of this first, and then I come to the chat board. Why does the GEPS ensemble have half an inch of precip up to Baltimore? Because, Ryan Kane, because the GEPS ensemble, that's the Canadian ensemble model, probably some members bring up some sizable precip. I'm not a big fan of using the ensemble, the ensemble models. Certainly not as a short range forecast tool. In particular, the Canadian. My issue with the ensembles is that if you use the ensembles, and what those of you who don't know, the ensembles, each model has an operational model that you see, but there are also different variations of that model. Some models have 20 different variations. The European, I think, has like 40 or 50 of them. So what they do is, they plot everything on maps going out through time. Each variation will come out with a different outcome, and then they take all those outcomes and kind of average it out. To me, that doesn't really work, because all you're going to do is get an average, and it's not going to tell you where the vast majority of events are going to occur, which were going to be on either side of average. So right off the bat, you are either going to be too low or too high, and there are going to be a number of events that are going to happen on the extremes of those, where you get a whole lot and nothing at all. So I just don't think it's a valuable forecast tool as a whole. I'm gonna pull it up off screen. I just want to see. That's the Canadian, and the maps, by the way, are courtesy of tropicaltidbits.com. So those of you who are into weather, you might want to consider that. So I'm going to go back. All right, you're making. I see what you're seeing. Actually, the GEPS ensemble has half an inch to southern New Jersey. To tell you the truth, I didn't even look at. I just want to take a look. This is out to 72 hours. I mean, it's got all the lows on the ensembles are clustered right along the North Carolina coast, and then you got a couple of them. There's a couple of members. There's one that has it right near the southern tip of the Delmarva Peninsula and runs it almost to the benchmark, which is 40 north, 70 west. I bet you that one member is throwing out a ton of precip, and that's the reason why you're seeing that half-inch amount as far north as it is. I really doubt that is going to be the case, and I'm looking at the GFS ensembles. There isn't a single member of the GFS ensembles that takes the low any further north than 35 degrees north. So the Canadian's up in its own little world. There is no measurable the northern extent of measurable on the GFS ensembles is only to the Delaware border. I'm just going to really fast. Just want to take a quick look here off screen. I'm just running just seeing if there's anything interesting in the parallel GFS, and there really isn't. It looks like just low after low going to our west into the long range before it finally gets colder at the end of the forecast period. Okay, so It's 4 to 8. Glad to get a thing, but looking at this, I can tell double digits. You know your area better. Why go, bros? Glad to get a look at this and tell you double digits. High on Sunday 32, high on Monday 36. Sounds like a bad week if we get double. I think that's perfectly reasonable. I think your thinking is sound. Why is an ice storm rare here on Long Island? Does the ocean have a lot to do with it? William Huber. On Long Island, yeah, it does, because it's not often that you get the cold air to wedge just enough. You need that. Talk about a delicate balance. You're going to need low-level cold air, warmer air aloft coming in. You would need to have a scenario, an almost perfect setup, really, because the warm air off the ocean more often than not completely overwhelms all levels of the atmosphere, including the bottom level. All right, so that keeps the number of ice storms down here to a minimum. Which was it, the January 14th, I want to say, or the January 11th or 12th of 1978 ice storm for Long Island. That was a rare instance because of the fact that, or maybe it was the January 19th storm that on Long Island turned to a big ice storm. I'm trying to recall these things off the top of my head. One of those in that 3-storm sequence was a big ice storm, but there was very little wind with that, and the temperatures just kind of settled at 29 or 30 and wasn't able to go up, and it was a fresh coating of snow on the ground. The ocean plays a big role in keeping ice situations on Long Island to a minimum. That's not to say that it hasn't happened. It just really doesn't happen very often. And it's been many years since this area in general, eastern Pennsylvania, southern New England, there have been areas that have had serious icing situations. But in terms of a widespread ice storm, it has been a very, very long time. Anthony was asking about the RGEM model, which is one of the Canadian models, which actually is not a half bad model. I didn't even get an opportunity to look at it. I'm going to look at it really fast. Well, the RGEM actually is a little bit further to the north. The RGEM has the surface low sitting just off the North Carolina coast by 54 hours. It's got rain into southern Delaware. It actually brings the leading edge of snow up to Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, but it only goes out to 54 hours, so I can't really see it. It does show, as the other models, that's that significant snow and icing event in the southeast, the same geographic area, and I'm running through this really quick, so I'm just looking at the, it's a little further north with everything, but it doesn't jive with the European or the GFS, and the parallel GFS is a little bit further north, I think, than the operational GFS and for the European. So I'm comfortable with I'm pretty comfortable with what we've been talking about in terms of where this is all going to wind up. Latitude that in northern New England and southeast Canada coastline is known to have several ice storms. 1997 affected many parts of the Maritimes. James Hines, I think too, if I remember correctly, 97 might have been an El Nino year, and it might have been a strong, a rather strong El Nino year, and that could be, there were some big ice storms that extended up into northern New England and southern Canada that have happened in El Nino years where you don't get a whole lot of snow in New England during those winters. So the ice idea is a bit. The ice storm idea probably a little more possible in stronger El Nino years. Garo Vetsis, hi there. Welcome back. I haven't seen you in a while. When it even comes close to our area in northern New Jersey, that's when you'll start getting excited. Other than that, it's an oh well. Yeah, this is a frustrating thing for snow lovers. Kind of trying to route the storm up the coast, and that really doesn't work very well. Carrie Suggs, 33 miles northeast of Atlanta. Do you think the pattern pattern that we're seeing now will set up for the rest of the winter. We sure do love snow down here. Well, weak El Nino, and from what we're seeing with everything else, it does favor a southern storm track and a below average temperature profile across much of the south. So I would not at all be surprised to see another event or two along the way. Okay, sorry, I just saw a message with respect to South Carolina. You want me to refresh the map? Okay, there are some bigger numbers, so let me just bring this back up again. Looks like they've kind of upped the numbers. Thank you very much, by the way. Who was it that asked me that? Casey Red Dragon, thank you for telling me that. Hang on, I'm going to bring that window back up. And I got to find it. Where did I put it? I lose things around here. There we go. All right. Now, so we've got an updated snow forecast map from the Weather Service. It looks like they punched up the numbers a bit for parts of South Carolina. So for Clemson, Greenville, Spartanburg, those numbers have all gone up. Clayton at 7, Toccoa, I hope I'm saying that right, an inch there, but 3 at Clemson, 3 at Greenville, Spartanburg 5. You know, it's that southwestern part of that area in northeastern Georgia where it's going to be really tricky. Clayton at 7. You're going to see these numbers get moved around in both directions before this is all said and done for sure. And of course, you can see the bigger amounts that are being indicated up to the north and west. So that area has not changed. Thank you for the heads up. Again, you know, rely on your local National Weather Service office. You can get all the information on this. If you are in the southeast, you know that's I think you should be your go-to place. Weather. Whoops, shaking the desk here. Sorry about that. Weather.gov, and just click on your local geography. Johnny Quest, you're on that northern fringe. So you're trying to route this. I don't know if you're trying to route this further north or further south, because I doubt you want a deep snow cover if we're going to start dealing with big rain events up your way with all the rain that you've had. Mirtha Gunter, you're in where you are in North Carolina. You're going to get your solid shot of snow from this, and I'll be very interested in what you wind up with and what you'll be experiencing as we go through this weekend. Okay. Gonna wrap it up here. Let me just tell you all, I have a weather platform on Patreon, and if you are interested in more extensive weather coverage from my perspective, and we've got members, by the way, from all over the eastern U.S. And even in places that are not in the eastern U.S. So you might enjoy it. We do a lot of extra stuff on there throughout the day, regular posts that are on my website, but posts that are not on my website. I'm sorry, I have to respond to you, Reaver. Give me 1 second. But we also do live streams just for Patreon members. We did one this morning. And I try and do them every day, but I don't always get to it. It depends on my schedule, but I do attempt to do that. So if you're interested, I put the link up on the chat board. It's a subscription site. It starts at $2 a month, and please, by all means, check it out. And there's some free stuff on there too that you can take a look at. Also, if you are in the New York, New Jersey, Long Island, Southern Connecticut, Hudson Valley area, New York City, I meant to say. If you're in those areas and you have an Android device, I have an app on Google Play, and you can download that. It's absolutely free, and you can actually watch the live streams on the app. Either I put them on live, which I did do tonight, but I forgot to send out a notification to the app subscribers, so you'll have to watch it on the replay, or you can watch it on the replay. There's waiting for Apple to approve the iPhone version. Hopefully that'll come anytime now. It's been a couple of weeks going back and forth with them, having to do some minor technical changes, and it just stuff just takes a lot of time. So you can see that the link is up there on the chat board. And also, for those of you who you're interested in maybe supporting my channel a little bit, it's a very easy way to do it. You can shop on Amazon. If you do shop on Amazon, just do it with the link that's on the descriptor to this live stream or the descriptor to this video if you are watching on the replay. We are a participant in the Amazon Services LLC program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for us to earn some fees by linking to Amazon and its affiliated site. So if you shop on Amazon and if you use the link that I just put up, the short version of that link, if you use that link, you get your stuff, and Amazon throws me back a little bit of coin, puts a few cigars in my Christmas stocking, and I'm a happy camper, and it doesn't come out of your pocket. So thank you for those of you who have done that. Reaver, I'm wearing a black jacket, but if it looks like I've lost some weight, thank you. I could always certainly could use to shed about 10 or 15 pounds that I seem to have put back on in the last couple of years after working it all off. So, but thank you, just to say I appreciate it. It's also the camera and my cheekbones. Okay, my entire body hangs off my cheekbones. I've got terrific bone structure, as I've been told. Okay, all right, folks. So we're going to attempt a Joe and Joe weather show tonight. He's going to Skype in, and that's at 9:20 on Facebook. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee. I will tell you that more than likely, not 100% on this, but there's a high probability that I won't be live streaming on tomorrow. I've got some things to do, and I kind of need a little bit of a break. But if something changes, I will try to do one. If it's going to happen, it's more than likely to happen earlier in the day than as opposed to the evening. Just to give you a heads up. But there's a fairly good chance that I may not be able to live stream tomorrow. But I will then live stream Sunday morning while all this is going on. So this will be during the main event in North Carolina and in Southern Virginia. All right. Thanks very much for being here tonight. I hope everybody had a great week. I really appreciate those of you who come here on a daily basis. It's wonderful to have this regular crowd that we know by name coming on every night. And thank you very much. Thank you for those of you who've supported my channel with either Patreon, or if you've gotten the app, or if you've shopped on Amazon. I really appreciate it. And we will, if we don't see you tomorrow, we will see you probably at some point on Sunday.